The storm took the town first. Wind punched the empty street. Rain came like 1,000 thrown pebbles. Lightning cut the sky and left it trembling. Inside the sudden white glow, a cowboy stood with his hat low and his coat dark with water. He moved as if the night leaned on him. He looked like a man who knew how to stand still while the world broke around him. Mara Ellison saw him from the porch of the freight office. She had been locking the ledger and tying back the shutters when the wind slapped them open again. The rope whipped her wrist. She hissed at the sting. She should have gone back inside. She did not. The sight of that tall figure at the far end of the street held her. He paused at the hitching post outside the silent saloon. No lamplight there, only the swinging sign, a painted star near worn away. The cowboy lifted his head. Their eyes met across the wet dark. It felt impossible at that distance, yet the look landed. Lightning showed the lines of his face. Not young, not old. A face worked by sun and grit and a kind of patient sorrow. He touched the brim of his hat to her, then turned slightly aside, as if to spare her the weight of being seen. She could have gone back in. She told herself she would. The rain answered for her. It swept clean the porch and chased her out into the open. She ran with the key in her fist. Boots slid, skirt heavy with water, hair loosed from its pins. She reached the overhang of the mercantile across from the saloon and pressed her back to the rough post. The storm's breath moved through her ribs. Somewhere behind the sound, her pulse kept its own small thunder. He crossed toward her, calm, direct. The rain did not hurry him. He stopped 2 paces away and nodded again. Even through the weather, she caught the scent of horse and leather and wet sage. He said his name like a simple fact. Jase Calder. His voice found a low place and settled there. It made the storm seem farther off. She told him her name. She did not add the rest: widow, bookkeeper, woman who once believed the future could be shaped like a ring. The rain had already said it all. Jase looked past her at the freight office door, banging its tired complaint. He glanced toward the livery and the dark church and the black seam of hills beyond town. "You should be inside," he said. "You too," she answered. He half smiled and shook his head. Then his eyes searched the street again, not restless, watchful. The wind rose and the rain grew finer. In that sifted curtain, the night became a room. They stood in it together, strangers sharing the same borrowed breath. Heat moved under her damp dress where nerves realized they were alive. Fear and wanting were cousins. They came from the same hard country. But then she whispered, "Are you waiting for someone?" Jase's gaze returned to her. "Not someone," he said. "Something." She should have pressed him. The word something carried a scrape, yet the storm smudged edges and softened questions. She watched a drop slide from his hat brim. It fell between them and broke like a small star. Lightning rolled close again. A crack tore over the hills. From the far edge of town came a second sound, smaller but sharper. Metal, a gate, or a rifle being eased from its quiet. Jase listened. He stepped closer, not to touch, but to be near. The nearness was its own touch. He was taller than she had thought, broad through the shoulders, a shadow cut from darker shadow. He did not smell of whiskey. He wore no badge. He had the stillness of a man who measured before he moved. The storm made every memory vivid. Mara saw the letter she had not opened on her desk, the one from her sister in the north, the one she had promised to read weeks ago. She saw her husband's boots by the door, empty now 3 winters. She saw herself in the freight office window, the blur of a woman who had learned to make lists so she would not count losses. Jase's voice came low. "There is talk of riders," he said, "men who like storms, men who believe rain hides their deeds." Her skin tightened. She thought of the cash box in the strong room, of the widow across the alley with a newborn who woke twice each night to the sound of her own hunger, of the old preacher who kept his sermons in a tin with peppermint sticks. "What do they want?" she said. He studied the street again, usually the same things: money, fear, names. She tasted the word names. It had corners. Names meant blame. Names meant debts that cut both ways. She felt him weighing whether to say more. The rain moved over the rooftops like hands. Something in her loosened and ached at once. "We could make for the church," she said. "Stone walls, a bell to warn the others." Jase shook his head. "Stone walls are good once you are inside." "Not on the way there. The saloon will do. No light to show us and room to wait it out. If trouble comes, the doors are heavy." She looked at the saloon. Rain slicked the steps. The double doors knocked each other softly like teeth in a cold jaw. She had sworn she would not go in again. She had sworn it to herself the day her husband died in a card room 2 towns over and left her with a marriage that ended inside a shadowed back room, but the night asked for different vows. Jase lifted his hand, not to hurry her, to offer. The space between his palm and her fingers was a small fire. She placed her hand near his, close enough to feel the warmth, not close enough to close the distance. The restraint sent a quiet spark through her. Heat, yes, but also a kind of respect that steadied her like a hand to a skittish horse. He took the first step. She matched him. They crossed the street in the rain. It made a steady sound that might have been prayer. At the top stair she hesitated and glanced at him. He held her gaze just long enough to lend her some of his calm. Inside the dark, the air smelled of old smoke and polish and the faint ghost of spilled rye. She heard the low drip of water from the rails. The piano waited with its teeth shut. Jase moved to the bar and felt along the shelf for the lantern. His fingers found the cold iron hook. He lifted the lamp and set it on the counter. He did not strike a match. "Better to let our eyes learn the room," he said. They stood near each other in the soft dark and let the night draw a new map of trust. Her lungs eased. Her heart did not. It wanted what it wanted. The wanting itself was a kind of warmth that spread into her hands and up her neck. Midway through that quiet, she felt an old ache rise and meet the new heat. She had lived on the dry side of touch for a long time. She had kept a careful distance from anything that could be taken away. Yet this small room and this stranger put breath where she had held it for years. She spoke before she could change her mind. What he didn't know was that I have a key to the strong room and a ledger that holds more truth than the church pews ever did. Jase turned his head, and the dark folded some light around the cut of his cheek. "Truth draws wolves," he said. "I know," she answered, "but it also draws help." He did not ask what was in the ledger. He did not ask what hurt had written it. He only angled himself so his body faced the door. He was a wall and a window, both. She stepped a little closer. Their sleeves brushed. It was nothing. It was everything. Heat moved across that small touch, and the storm outside lowered its voice to listen. Another sound came then, not wind, not rain, hooves on wet clay, slow, testing. Jase's hand rested near the lantern. He did not lift it. He spoke in a voice meant for the space between two people who had just met and yet felt older together than the town itself. "If you stay near me, I can keep you safe," he said. Her answer surprised her with its steadiness. "I will stay." Outside, the hooves paused. The night held its breath. Somewhere a hinge complained and stilled. If this moment has warmed a quiet corner in you, hold it close and breathe with me. The storm has not finished speaking. The doors are about to. The doors did not burst open. Not yet. They trembled first, pushed by the wind's heavy hand. Mara's breath stilled in her chest. The air in the saloon felt thick, tasting of metal and dust. Jase moved one quiet step closer to the entrance. His palm brushed the lantern's handle, but left it unlit. A voice came through the storm. "Evening, Calder!" The name fell like a coin on a cold table. She heard it strike and roll inside her mind. He didn't flinch. He only straightened, as if the night had just said something he'd been expecting. Mara glanced at him. The shadows made his face unreadable. "They know you," she whispered. "Once," he said, "a long ride ago." The doors creaked again. 3 men stepped in. The storm framed them, shapes of mud, leather, and wet hats that hid their eyes. The one in the middle carried his shoulders like someone used to being obeyed. Jase didn't reach for his gun. He didn't need to. His silence carried weight enough. "Didn't think I'd find you in a town like this," the man said. His voice had the grin built into it. "You still running from ghosts?" Jase answered slow. "Sometimes ghosts run faster." The other man's laughter echoed through the saloon. "Still got that tongue. But you owe me more than words, Calder." Mara caught the sharp flicker in Jase's eyes, there and gone. He didn't want her part of this. She could feel it. But the way he stood, steady, grounded, told her he wouldn't step back either. She stepped forward anyway. "Whatever your business is," she said, "it doesn't belong in my town." The leader looked her way, surprised. "Your town?" "It is tonight," she replied, voice low. For a moment, even the storm quieted to hear that. The man's grin softened into something darker. He took a step closer to her. "You've got spirit. Careful where you aim it." Jase's hand rose, calm, slow, like he was soothing a horse. "Leave her," he said. "You came for me." The leader turned back, sneering. "I came for what you took." Jase's jaw tightened. "I didn't take it. I left it where it belonged. Then I'll take it from you this time, one way or another." The moment stretched like the air before thunder. Jase's fingers hovered near his holster. Mara's heart drummed in her throat. She'd seen gunfights before, too many, too close. But this one was different. It carried a history she didn't yet know, and a danger that already knew her name. Then the lightning struck outside, bright enough to paint the saloon white for half a heartbeat. In that flash, she saw everything. The polished revolver at Jase's hip, the scar on the other man's temple, the dust still clinging to the boots that had never been washed clean by rain. When the light vanished, the room fell back into shadow. "You shouldn't be here, Mara," Jase said quietly. Go to the back room. Lock the door. Her instinct was to obey. Her pride refused. I won't leave you alone. You won't have to, said the leader, stepping forward again. Jase's hand moved, not fast, precise. The sound cracked like the sky outside. A single shot split the silence, echoing off the bottles. One man dropped his gun and stumbled backward, clutching his arm. The leader froze. Rain filled the pause. You've still got that aim, he said. I'm not looking to prove it again, Jase answered. The leader's grin faded. He nodded once, then turned for the door. You always did pick the wrong storms to stand in. When they were gone, the saloon sighed, wood settling, wind easing through the cracks. Mara exhaled the breath she'd been holding. Her knees wanted to give, but Jase's steady presence kept her upright. She looked at him. Who were they? He set the pistol down on the counter and rolled his shoulders like he'd just put down an old weight. Men I rode with once, before I learned what riding with them cost. You said you were waiting for something, she whispered. Was it them? He shook his head. No, it was the moment they'd finally stop looking. Rain began to soften, turning from fury to whisper. He picked up the lantern and lit it this time. The light brushed across his features, revealing exhaustion that went beyond the night. Mara's eyes softened. You could have killed them. Would have been easier, he said. But I'm tired of easy. The glow flickered between them, gold and quiet. She reached for a rag on the bar, dabbing at the blood that had splattered near his sleeve. Her fingers brushed his skin. Just a touch, careful, but not cold. He didn't pull away. His breath deepened, heavy with everything he didn't say. Outside, thunder rolled farther down the valley, as if the storm itself had decided to move on. Mara felt something shift inside her. Not safety, not yet, but the shape of it. Jase looked at her like a man who'd forgotten how to hope and just remembered again. She smiled faintly. The night's quieting. For now, he said, but storms like this have a way of circling back. The rain eased to a hush, like a secret being kept. She turned toward the window, watching the drops trace paths down the glass. Then maybe we don't run next time, she said softly. Maybe we stand and face it. Jase's voice came warm, low. Maybe. Outside, a horse neighed, distant, uneasy. He glanced at the door again, and something in his eyes changed. Alert, cautious. The storm wasn't done after all. If this story has stirred something quiet inside you, the narrator's tone softened, stay close. The dawn hasn't come yet, and the past is still riding through the rain. The storm had moved on, but the night still hummed with its echo. The smell of wet earth drifted through the saloon's open door. Somewhere in the distance a shutter banged, loose and lonely. Mara stood by the window, lantern light painting her hair in gold threads. The silence between her and Jase wasn't empty. It carried too many questions neither dared ask yet. He cleaned his revolver slowly, deliberate in every motion, like a man who trusted his hands more than his words. "You didn't tell me," she said quietly. "What did you do to those men?" Jase's gaze stayed on the gun. "It's not what I did. It's what I stopped doing." Her brow furrowed. "You make it sound like a confession." He slid the revolver into its holster and leaned against the bar. "Maybe it is. She waited, patient. Outside, the rain had turned to a soft mist. The moon, veiled by cloud, laid a faint silver glow on the muddy street. Finally, Jase spoke. "We were bounty riders, a gang that hunted men for coin. Didn't matter which side of the law they stood on. One job blurred into the next, until you couldn't tell right from wrong anymore. Then there was a night. A boy, no older than 16, caught in the crossfire. I put down my gun and walked away." Mara's throat tightened. "And they never forgave you for it?" "No. Men like that don't forgive. They remember." She turned toward him, searching his face. The edges of his story were sharp, but his voice softened on the last words, like someone brushing dirt off a grave. "You think they'll come back?" she asked. "They always come back. Trouble does what the wind does, finds you no matter where you hide." Mara walked closer, her skirts whispering against the floorboards. "Then don't hide here," she said. "The town's small. It can't take more blood." Jase looked at her, really looked, as if measuring whether she meant the warning or the care behind it. "I'm not here to bring blood," he said. "I'm here to settle something." "What?" His eyes met hers, steady, blue-grey, like dawn over steel. "Myself." That silence after felt like truth. She wanted to step back, to guard herself from the quiet pull he carried. But instead, she found herself taking one slow breath closer. The lantern flickered, its flame bending in the draught. "And if the storm finds you again?" she asked. He half smiled. "Then maybe this time I don't face it alone." Her chest tightened at that. There was a tenderness in the way he said it, not a promise, not yet, but the ghost of one. Before she could answer, a sound cracked through the calm. A single hoofbeat, slow and deliberate, then another. Mara's breath caught. "They came back." Jase moved to the door, pulling it open just enough to see the street. The mist had thickened into a pale fog. The sound of hooves echoed somewhere beyond the livery, uneven, dragging. He stepped out under the overhang. The night pressed close. "Stay inside," he said. Mara ignored that. She followed him, shawl wrapped tight against the damp. Her hand brushed his arm before she even thought about it. His sleeve was warm, solid. The horse emerged from the fog first, a chestnut gelding, rider slumped forward, the reins dragged. The animal stopped on instinct, trembling. Jase caught the reins and eased the man down. The stranger's coat was torn, soaked in blood and rain. His face was pale, eyes wide, but unfocused. Mara gasped. "Oh, God, he's dying." "Not yet," Jase said, lowering him gently to the wooden walkway. "Fetch water and clean cloth." She ran for the saloon, heart pounding. When she returned, he'd cut the man's sleeve open. The wound was deep, a gunshot through the shoulder. Jase pressed the cloth tight, steady as stone. "He's a deputy," he muttered, noticing the tin badge half buried under the man's coat. "What's a lawman doing out here alone?" The man coughed, eyes fluttering open. His voice was barely air. "Looking for Calder." Mara's pulse stuttered. She looked at Jase, but he didn't move. "You found him," Jase said softly. The deputy tried to smile, failed. "Had to warn you." His hand twitched toward the pocket of his coat. Jase reached in, pulled out a crumpled note stained dark. He unfolded it in the lantern glow. The words were smeared but still legible. They're coming at dawn, not just 3, a dozen. Jase's jaw set. They brought the whole storm. Mara's breath shook. What do we do? He looked at her, calm, unhurried, like a man who had stood in storms before. We get the town ready, he said. And you find somewhere safe. Her chin lifted. Don't tell me to hide. His eyes softened. It's not hiding. It's surviving. Then we both survive, she said. He hesitated, then nodded once. Both. They carried the deputy inside, laying him near the hearth. The fire crackled back to life, throwing light on the room's edges. The tables, the chairs, the dust motes hanging like ghosts. Mara knelt beside the wounded man, pressing the cloth again. He won't make it till morning, she whispered. Jase's shadow fell over her. Then we listen, while he can still speak. The deputy stirred. They're coming for the ledger, he breathed. Her eyes shot to Jase's. The ledger? My ledger? He nodded grimly. Looks like our secrets aren't as quiet as we thought. The deputy's gaze flickered, searching Jase's face one last time. Don't let them take her. Then his eyes dimmed, leaving only the whisper of rain against the glass. Mara's hand trembled where it touched the man's sleeve. He meant me, she said. Jase's voice was low. He meant both of us. Outside, the fog thickened again, curling through the empty street like a living thing. He blew out the lantern and looked toward the door. They'll come with the sunrise. Mara rose slowly, her heartbeat echoing the thunder that had long faded. Then we have till dawn, she said, to decide who we'll be when they do. Jase met her eyes, a long, silent look that carried more than words could hold. If this story has sparked a flicker in your heart, the narrator murmured, stay close, because the dawn is coming, and with it, every secret buried in the dust. Dawn did not come gently. It crawled through the fog like a wounded animal, dragging pale light across the rooftops and painting the street in grey. The saloon still smelled of gunpowder, smoke, and blood, the scent of a night that refused to be forgotten. Mara sat by the cold hearth, her hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't drunk from. She'd been awake the whole night, watching the horizon and listening to Jase's footsteps as he checked the windows, the doors, the back alley. His movements were soundless, steady, like ritual. When he finally spoke, his voice was gravel-low. They'll hit the freight office first. It's where they think the ledger is. She looked up. You're sure? Men like them don't guess. They know where the money passes through. Her pulse quickened. That ledger doesn't just hold accounts. It holds names of who's paid the outlaw riders for protection, who's betrayed who. Jase nodded. That's why they're coming. He paused, watching her fingers tremble around the cup. You could still leave before they reach town. Mara met his gaze, tired but unbroken. You know I won't. A long silence settled between them, the kind that hums with unspoken things. He leaned against the bar, crossing his arms. You remind me of someone I knew once, he said. A rancher's wife, small town north of Abilene. She was strong enough to scare the men who thought they scared her. What happened to her? She stayed, he said softly. And the ones she stood up to learned that storms don't always win. Her lips curved faintly. You tell that story like it still matters to you. It does, he said, eyes dark with memory. Every storm I walk into, I hope I find her kind of courage again. Mara turned toward the window. The street beyond was empty, but the silence carried weight, the stillness before movement. Maybe courage isn't something you find, she said. Maybe it finds you when you've got nowhere else to go. He studied her face, the calm resolve, the stubborn grace. You talk like someone who's been through storms of her own. I buried one, she said, the kind that wore a ring. His jaw flexed, quiet understanding passing between them like a shared scar. I'm sorry, he said simply. Don't be, she whispered. I learned to stand because there was no one left to hold me up. A horse neighed outside, sharp, startled. Both of them turned. Jase's voice dropped. They're here. He crossed to the window, parting the curtain just enough to see. Riders, a dozen, maybe more, shadows against the fog, moving slow but certain. Mara's breath hitched. We can't fight that many. No, he said, but we can make them think we can. He moved with quiet efficiency, pulling a second revolver from his saddlebag, laying it on the table beside a small pouch of shells. Load these. Keep low. Don't shoot unless you have to. She stared at the weapon, the cold metal, the echo of every gunfight she'd ever heard. I've never... He cut her off gently. Then you aim for warning. Fire into the air, into walls. Let them hear we're awake. She nodded, forcing her hands to steady. And you? I'll keep them busy. He started toward the door, but she caught his arm. Jase. He turned, and in the dim light she saw the truth in his eyes. Not fear, not anger, but something raw. Acceptance. If you go out there alone, she said, you won't come back. He smiled, small, sad, beautiful. Then make sure it's worth not coming back for. She wanted to say something, anything that would stop him. But words failed. Instead, she pressed her palm against his chest, feeling the heartbeat beneath his shirt, solid and sure. Don't be a fool, she whispered. Too late, he said, and stepped outside. The street swallowed him. From the doorway, she watched him walk into the fog, a lone figure against the pale dawn, his coat fluttering like a torn banner. He stopped in the middle of the road, drew his hat low, and waited. The riders spread out, circling him. One, their leader, the man from the night before, dismounted and stalked forward. You should have kept running, Calder. Running's for men who still owe debts, Jase said. I'm paid in full. The leader laughed. You? Paid? You left your share in blood. Jase's hand hovered near his holster. I'm not here to take it back. Then you'll lose more than you already have. Mara gripped the doorframe, breath trembling. She wanted to look away, but couldn't. The leader's gun moved first, but not fast enough. Jase's shot cracked the dawn wide open. The man staggered, his gun spinning out of reach. Chaos erupted. Hooves shouting, thunder reborn in lead and echo. Mara ducked behind the bar as glass shattered. She fired once, just like he'd said, into the ceiling, into the sound. It didn't matter where the bullet went. What mattered was that they knew she was there. Outside, Jase fought like a man with nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. He moved through the smoke and light, his shadow a dance of grit and grace. When it ended, the air was still again. Too still. Mara rose slowly, ears ringing. The street was littered with silence. A few riders limped away, dragging the wounded with them. The fog carried their curses into the distance. She stepped outside. Jase stood near the well, breathing hard, coat torn at the shoulder. Blood darkened his sleeve. "You're hurt," she said. He looked down, half smiling. "A scratch." She reached him, pressing her hand against the wound. "That's no scratch." He didn't move away. Her touch was fire and calm all at once. "You did well," he murmured. "I did what I had to," she said. "Same here." Their eyes met, exhaustion and relief tangled with something deeper, something that hadn't yet found its name. The storm had broken, but the air between them still crackled with what it left behind. Behind them, the first light of morning bled through the fog, soft and pink and unreal. Mara looked toward it, and then back at him. "So what now?" Jase exhaled. "Now we see who else comes looking." The wind picked up again, carrying the scent of rain, and the echo of hooves somewhere far beyond the hills. She glanced at him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You think it's over?" He shook his head slowly. "No. The worst storms always circle back." The sun rose higher, washing the town in gold that looked too pure for the night they'd lived through. But even gold can't hide blood in the dirt. She looked down at her hand, still pressed to his arm. "Then we stay ready," she said. He nodded once. "Together." The word lingered between them, fragile, dangerous, promising. And from the ridge beyond the town, a glint of metal caught the sun, too deliberate to be chance. "If this story has set something stirring in you," the narrator's voice deepened like the horizon's breath, "stay close, because not every storm ends when the dawn arrives." By midday, the town wore the silence of the aftermath. Smoke still trailed from broken shingles. The rain had dried into thin rivers of mud, carrying bits of glass and memory down the street. The saloon doors hung crooked, one hinge screaming whenever the wind shifted. Jase sat on the porch rail, cleaning his gun with slow, practiced motions. His shirt was open at the shoulder, the blood dried brown along the edge. Mara stood inside, bandaging what she could reach. Every time she tied a knot, he flinched just enough for her to feel it. "You're lucky it missed the bone," she murmured. He gave a half smile. "Luck and I quit traveling together years ago." "You should rest." He glanced up. "You?" She looked out the window. "Can't. Not while there's work to do." He knew what she meant. The town had to be warned. The dead had to be buried, and the ledger, the reason men bled in the street, had to be hidden before anyone else came sniffing for it. He caught her hand as she turned away. "You don't have to carry this alone, Mara." She froze. It was the first time he'd said her name like that. Slow, careful, as if it might bruise. "I've been carrying worse," she said softly. "Maybe," he said, "but I've seen what carrying alone does to people. It breaks something that doesn't grow back right." Her eyes found his. "And what about you, Jase Calder? What did it break in you?" He studied her for a long moment. the wind stirring the dust around his boots. Everything that used to believe in easy endings. Mara exhaled, the breath shaky but real. Then maybe what's left can believe in something else. What's that? In trying again. For a heartbeat, the room held only the sound of the breeze and the faint creak of old wood. He didn't answer, but his silence was warmer than most words. Outside, the preacher's bell rang. One long toll for every man lost. The sound carried through the valley like a prayer trying to find its way home. Mara stepped onto the porch, pulling her shawl tighter. "They'll want to know what happened," she said, "and they'll want someone to blame." "Then they'll come here," Jase said. She nodded. "I'll tell them the truth." He met her gaze, serious. "Be careful with that. The truth can get a person killed faster than a lie out here." Her lips curved faintly. "You'd know." He almost smiled back, but something shifted in his expression, an alertness, a tension threading through his stillness. He rose. "What is it?" she asked. He looked toward the ridge. "Riders. 2 this time." Mara's stomach turned cold. "More of them?" "No," he said after a moment. "These ride cleaner, straighter, lawmen maybe." He holstered his gun, but didn't relax. "The last time he trusted a badge, it nearly cost him his life." The riders slowed as they entered town, one older, grey in his beard, the other young and sharp-eyed. They dismounted near the saloon and approached, boots heavy on the boards. "Morning," the older one said. "Name's Sheriff Cole Hart. This here's Deputy Rayner. We rode in from Red Hollow." Mara nodded politely. "You're a long way from your county, Sheriff." "Word travels faster than a bullet," he said. "We heard there was shooting, wanted to see if the rumors had teeth." "They did," Jase said, tone flat. The sheriff studied him. "You're Calder." "That a problem?" "Depends which Calder you are." "The one still breathing," Jase replied. The sheriff chuckled, not kindly but not cruelly either. "Heard you used to ride with McCade's crew." "Used to," Jase said. "That's the part that interests me." Mara stepped forward. "He saved this town last night." "Whatever you think you know about him, you're late to judge." The sheriff's eyes flicked to her, then back to Jase. "I ain't here to judge. I'm here to warn. McCade's still breathing too, and he's got men spread from here to the border. He won't like losing what's his." Jase's jaw tightened. "He never liked losing anything." The deputy glanced toward the freight office. "That where the ledger's kept?" Mara stiffened. "What ledger?" The sheriff smiled faintly. "You don't strike me as a liar, ma'am, but I'd be careful what you hide. Folks have died over less." "She doesn't owe you answers," Jase said. Cole Hart met his eyes. "No, but she'll need friends, and I'm about the only law still trying to keep dirt from covering more graves." The tension broke when the younger deputy stepped forward, removing his hat. "Sheriff, we should move. Storm's building again over the pass." Cole nodded. "We'll be back through before dusk." "If McCade sends anyone, don't wait to shoot." As they rode off, Mara turned to Jase. "He's right, isn't he? McCade won't stop." Jase's voice was quiet. "No. He's the kind of man who calls vengeance a duty." She took a deep breath. "Then we have to leave before nightfall." He shook his head. "We leave now. They'll track us before sundown. We stay. We control the ground." "And if we lose the ground?" He looked at her. that steady, unreadable calm again. Then we make them earn every inch. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain again, the kind of scent that meant another storm was brewing. Mara felt it too, deep in her chest, the same way she felt him, danger and safety, fear and warmth tangled into something that almost felt like trust. She looked out over the quiet street and whispered, "How many storms do you think a person can survive before they stop running?" Jase's voice came low behind her. "As many as it takes to remember what they're running toward." Her breath caught. She turned and found him closer than she meant to. His hand came up, slow and sure, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. Neither moved for a long, charged second. Outside, thunder rumbled far off in the hills. "If this story has found a heartbeat inside you," the narrator's voice deepened like dusk settling over the plains, "stay close. The next storm is already whispering on the wind." By late afternoon, the clouds had swallowed the sun whole. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of rain and the slow promise of danger. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm, when the land itself seems to hold its breath. Mara stood by the window of the freight office, the ledger open on the desk before her. Its pages glimmered faintly in the dim light, lines of ink that carried too much weight for paper to bear. Names, transactions, bribes, the town's hidden truth laid bare. She traced one entry with her finger, a tremor in her hand she refused to let him see. Jase leaned against the doorway, hat low, eyes on her, but saying nothing. His presence filled the room, calm, rough-edged, dependable, like an anchor in a restless sea. "You keep reading it like it'll change," he said softly. "Maybe it will," she replied. "Maybe if I stare long enough, it'll rewrite itself into something worth dying for." He stepped inside. "It already is." She glanced up, frowning. "You mean worth killing for?" Jase's jaw tightened. "Out here, sometimes there's no difference." The thunder rolled over the hills. The first drop of rain hit the glass. Mara closed the ledger and tied the strap around it. "What are we going to do with it?" "Bury it," he said. "Someplace only we know." She looked at him sharply. "We?" He nodded. "I reckon it's both our ghosts that brought it this far." She studied him, that quiet weight in his voice, drawing something unguarded out of her. "And after we bury it?" Jase exhaled. "Then maybe the ground keeps a secret better than people do." A lightning flash tore across the horizon, lighting his face for half a breath, the hard lines softened by something she couldn't name. She turned away to hide the heat in her chest. "You ever think about what comes after?" "After what?" "After all this running and fighting, after the storms stop." He hesitated. "Haven't seen one stop yet." "Maybe you've never had a reason to wait for it to." That caught him. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, until she could feel the warmth of him behind her. "And you?" he asked. "What reason keeps you here?" She closed her eyes. "Maybe I was tired of waiting alone." The air between them went still. No wind, no thunder, only the small sound of rain against the window, and two hearts finding the same rhythm. Jase's hand rose, brushing the edge of her sleeve, a touch light enough to be mistaken for hesitation, but not by her. The room seemed to tilt, gravity drawing them toward something inevitable and gentle all at once. She turned to face him. For a long second, they simply stood there, a heartbeat apart, everything unsaid trembling in the silence. Then his voice came low. "If I kiss you, there's no going back." Her answer was a whisper that cut deeper than thunder. "Maybe that's the point." His hand found her jaw, rough thumb tracing the edge of her face. Her breath caught, not in fear, but in recognition. The kind that feels like coming home to something you'd forgotten you lost. When he kissed her, it wasn't the kind of fire that burns fast. It was steady, deep, like the rain soaking into parched earth. His lips carried both hunger and restraint. A man used to holding back and finally letting go. She melted into it, her fingers curling into his shirt as the outside world disappeared. The storm broke open. Rain slammed against the windows. Wind rattled the freight office door. And still, he didn't pull away. When he finally did, he stayed close enough for his breath to warm her cheek. "We should leave tonight," he said. "Leave where?" she whispered. "Anywhere that isn't waiting for men like McCade." She shook her head. "You think running will end it? The ledger will still exist. The truth doesn't vanish just because you ride away." He searched her eyes, a long, conflicted look that carried years of running. "Then what do you want to do, Mara?" She swallowed hard. "I want to finish this." "Finish it how?" "By making sure no one ever uses it again. Not McCade, not the law, not anyone. But I can't do it alone." He nodded slowly. "Then I'm with you." Lightning flashed again, throwing their shadows across the wall. Two shapes joined in the glow, steady against the storm. They spent the next hour preparing, loading rifles, gathering what food remained, packing the ledger in a tin case. Outside, the downpour turned the street into a river of light. When they stepped outside, the world was nothing but rain and wind. Jase led the horses from the stable, saddles glistening wet. He helped her up onto the mare, his hand lingering at her waist longer than it needed to. "You trust me?" he asked. "I'm still here, aren't I?" she said, smiling faintly through the rain. He swung into his saddle beside her. "Then let's finish it." They rode out of town, the storm chasing at their backs. The hills opened wide ahead of them, the lightning painting the sky in violent beauty. The world smelled of wet sage, smoke and new beginnings. Hours passed before they stopped, a rise overlooking the desert plain where the wind spoke softer and the rain came gentle again. Jase dismounted first, scanning the horizon. No one followed. Mara slid down, clutching the tin case to her chest. "Then this is where we leave it." They dug a shallow trench beneath a twisted mesquite tree. When the case was laid inside, Mara stood still, staring down at it. Jase stepped beside her. "You sure?" She nodded. Some truths deserve to stay buried. He covered it with dirt, firm and final. Then they stood there in the dark, the storm easing into drizzle, the air washed clean. For a long while, neither spoke. The quiet wasn't empty this time. It was peace, the fragile kind that feels borrowed from heaven. Mara turned toward him. "When this is over, what then?" He looked at her, rain slipping down his face like memory. "Then we see if there's something left worth building." She smiled softly. "Maybe there is." The wind moved between them, lifting her hair, carrying the scent of rain and heat and promise. He reached out, tucked a strand behind her ear, and for a moment it felt like the world had forgiven them both. But somewhere far below, in the valley beyond the ridge, a single flash of light broke through the mist. A torch, or maybe a signal. Mara's eyes widened. "Jase." He followed her gaze. His jaw tightened. "They found us." The peace shattered. The storm had only been resting. "If this story has touched something inside you," the narrator's voice came slow and low, "stay close, because even love can't outrun what waits in the rain." The torches came first, small, flickering ghosts crawling up from the valley below. Then the thunder of hooves rolling steady through the wet dark. Mara counted at least 10, maybe more. Too many for luck, too close for mercy. Jase was already moving. He yanked the saddlebag open, tossing her the small rifle wrapped in oilskin. "Keep low," he said. "Behind the rocks." She didn't argue. Not this time. Her body moved before her fear could catch up. The stormlight flashed over his face, calm, carved in determination. She'd never seen anyone so still in the face of chaos. "They tracked the horses," Mara said, voice tight. "McCade's boys know every trail," Jase replied. "But they don't know the one we're about to make." Rain fell harder, turning the dirt to slick clay beneath their boots. The torches grew brighter, a swarm of light against the night. Jase crouched beside her behind the boulders. "You shoot if they see me. Only then." She nodded, fingers trembling as she loaded the rifle. "And if they don't?" He met her eyes. "Then you don't. No reason to invite ghosts before they come calling." The riders crested the ridge. McCade was at the front, broad-shouldered, coat black as the sky. His voice cut through the wind like broken glass. "Calder! You should have stayed buried with the rest of your past." Jase stood slowly, stepping into the open rain. The flash of lightning caught the silver buckle at his belt, the holster worn smooth from years of use. "Funny," he said. "I was just thinking the same about you." McCade laughed, not the sound of joy, but of a man who'd long forgotten what it felt like. "You took what's mine." "That ledger held my name clean. Now I'll take yours in blood." "I don't owe you that book," Jase said, "and I sure as hell don't owe you my life." McCade raised his hand. "Then you'll pay anyway." The first shot cracked through the storm. Dirt leapt at Jase's boots. He dropped to one knee and fired back. Fast, precise, one shot, one breath. A rider fell. Another screamed. The ridge became fire and noise. Mara ducked low, heart pounding so hard it hurt. She wanted to scream his name, to drag him back, to tell him this wasn't worth dying for. But the storm swallowed her voice whole. Jase moved like the wind itself, never frantic, never afraid. The sound of his gun was rhythm, not panic. Every pull of the trigger was a heartbeat measured. But the riders kept coming. Mara lifted the rifle, sighting through the rain. One man broke from the pack, angling toward Jase's blind side. Her breath caught. She fired. The recoil jolted through her shoulder, sharp and shocking. The rider spun off his horse, crashing into the mud. Jase turned at the sound. Their eyes met across the storm. Just a flicker, but enough. "You did good," he shouted. She didn't feel good. Her hands shook, her chest tight. The rain mixed with tears she wouldn't name. Then a blast ripped through the air. A shotgun, close. Jase stumbled backward, hit hard, fell to one knee. "Jase!" She was running before she knew it. The rifle clattered from her hands. She slid down the slope, boots slipping through the mud. McCade stepped out of the smoke, grin wide beneath his hat. "You should have kept your distance, sweetheart," he sneered. "He's just another ghost now." Mara froze, eyes on Jase. He was still breathing, barely. Her fear turned cold, clean, precise. "No," she said quietly. McCade laughed. "You got fire. Shame to waste it." She reached for the revolver at Jase's belt, the same one she'd bandaged around days ago. Her fingers wrapped around the grip. McCade took another step forward. "You don't have the nerve." Lightning flared. Her hand was steady. "Try me." He raised his gun, but she was faster. The sound cracked the storm wide open. McCade's eyes went wide, disbelief turning to darkness. He hit the mud without another word. The rain fell harder. The echoes faded. The others turned and rode, fear scattering them like leaves in wind. Mara dropped the gun and dropped beside Jase, hands shaking. "Don't you dare," she whispered. "Don't you dare leave me now." His eyes fluttered open, pain clouded but alive. "You shot McCade." She let out a breath between a sob and a laugh. "I told you I'd stand and face it." He smiled, faint but real. "Reckon you did." She pressed her hand against the wound. The blood was warm, too warm. "We need to move. You can't stay out here." He tried to sit, groaned. "There's a cabin down the ridge. Old miner's post. 1/2 mile, maybe less." "Then that's where we're going," she said. She helped him to his feet, her arm around his waist, his weight heavy but trusted. They stumbled through the rain, each step pulling them closer to the sound of survival. By the time they reached the cabin, dawn was just a thought behind the clouds. Inside, the air was damp, but it was shelter. She lit the small stove, the orange light crawling across the walls. Jase sank onto the floor, pale but breathing. "You're shaking," he murmured. "So are you," she said, voice soft but fierce. He smiled weakly. "Guess we're both alive then." She met his gaze, the heat between them gentler now but deeper, anchored in everything they'd just survived. She reached up, brushing the wet hair from his forehead. "Don't talk," she whispered. "Just stay." He caught her hand and held it against his chest, where his heartbeat still thudded stubborn and strong. "I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the rain began to slow, the last drops tapping like tired applause against the roof. Inside, the silence grew warm, filled with the breath of two souls who'd found each other in the wreckage. She leaned closer, her voice barely a murmur. "You saved me." His reply came rough, tender. "No, Mara. You saved us both." And for the first time in years, she believed it. The firelight flickered, their shadows touching across the floorboards, two shapes that no longer stood apart. And far beyond the ridge, in the dying storm, another pair of riders watched the cabin's faint glow, silent witnesses to a story not yet done. If this story has lit a spark in you, the narrator's voice deepened like embers catching, stay close, because every storm leaves behind the fire it was meant to start. The storm broke at last. By morning, the hills were washed clean, the air sharp with the scent of wet cedar and smoke. Mist curled low over the valley, softening everything it touched. The world felt quiet again. Too quiet, like something waiting to breathe. Inside the cabin, the fire had burned down to a sleepy orange glow. Mara sat on the floor beside Jase, his head resting near her lap, a folded coat under him for a pillow. The wound had stopped bleeding, but his skin was still pale, slick with the fever that came after bullets and rain. She dipped the rag into cool water and brushed it over his forehead. His breath steadied for a moment. Then he stirred, eyes half open. "You stayed," he murmured. "Wasn't planning to leave," she said. He smiled weakly. "That ledger, still buried?" "Still buried," she said, "right where the world can't find it." "Good," he whispered. "Let it stay there." She wrung out the cloth again, watching the water drip into the basin. "You need a doctor." He shook his head. "No time. McCade's gone, but he won't be the last. There's always someone wanting to claim what he built." "You don't know that," she said. "Out here, I do." She sighed, leaning her back against the wall. "Maybe that's the problem. You've been living like the fight never ends." Jase's eyes found hers. "And you haven't?" She wanted to argue but couldn't. Instead, she looked toward the window, fog swallowing the world, trees bowing in the wind. "Maybe I have," she said quietly, "but I'm tired of it." He smiled, small, broken, but real. "That makes two of us." For a long moment they just breathed together, the storm's echo fading outside, the warmth between them steady and slow. Then Mara spoke again, her voice low. "When this passes, I'll go north. My sister's got a ranch near Laramie. She sent letters. I never answered." Jase nodded faintly. "You should go." She hesitated. "What about you?" He looked into the fire, eyes reflecting its glow. "Don't know yet. I used to think I'd die in a place like this, quiet, forgotten. Now—" He paused. "Now I keep thinking about the sound of your voice when you said my name." Her chest tightened. She swallowed hard. "Jase, I'm not asking," he said softly. "Just saying it out loud before I lose the chance." Silence again, heavy but not cruel. Outside, a crow called from the ridge, the sound sharp and distant. The day was trying to move forward, even if they weren't ready to. She pressed the back of her hand against his cheek. "You're burning up. Lie still." He caught her wrist gently. "You'll catch it if you stay close." "Then I'll burn too," she whispered. "At least it'll be together." The words settled between them, honest and reckless as wildfire. Jase closed his eyes, breathing slow. "You talk like someone who's not afraid anymore." Maybe I finally remembered what it feels like to be alive. She didn't expect the tears. They came sudden, hot, uninvited. He lifted his hand, brushed them away with a touch so tender it almost undid her. He whispered, "You ever think maybe some storms come just to wash the past clean?" She nodded. "And maybe some to show us who we are when it's gone." He smiled faintly, drifting toward sleep. "Then I reckon I met mine." When his breathing settled, Mara stayed there, watching him. The firelight caught the scar on his jaw, the soft line of his mouth. A man both dangerous and safe, broken and whole in the same breath. Outside, the fog thinned. For the first time, she saw sunlight touch the edge of the valley. A thin golden promise that the world might start again. She stood, stretched, and stepped outside. The air was cold and new. Below, the plain stretched wide and empty, except for 2 riders in the distance. The same figures from the ridge the night before. Her heart clenched. They hadn't gone. One of them raised a spyglass. Even from far away she could feel the weight of their gaze. She went back inside. Jase stirred as she shut the door. "They're coming," she said. He pushed himself up, wincing. "How many?" "2, for now." "But they're watching." He reached for his revolver, checked the chamber, and nodded. "Then we don't run this time." Mara crossed her arms, jaw set. "You're in no shape to fight." He met her eyes, steady, stubborn. "Then I'll stand anyway." She stepped closer, voice trembling with anger and care all at once. "Why? Why keep fighting when it's only ever taken from you?" He looked at her, quiet, for a long moment. "Because it's different now. Before, I fought to survive. Now, I fight for what's worth surviving for." Her breath caught. "And what's that?" He reached out, fingertips brushing her chin. "You." The word hit like truth, clean and heavy. She didn't speak, just leaned into his touch, the world narrowing to that single, fragile connection. Outside, the wind shifted. Hooves echoed faintly from below. The day was moving toward something neither of them could stop. Jase holstered his gun and took her hand. "If they want what's left of me, they'll have to come through both of us." Her pulse raced under his palm, but she nodded. "Then they'll have a hell of a fight." The fire flared again behind them, light licking up the walls like the breath of a new storm. And from the valley below, the riders began to climb. "If this story has found a heartbeat inside your quiet," the narrator's voice came low and rough as thunder over distance, "stay close, because love, like a storm, always circles back for what it can't forget." By the time the riders reached the ridge, the sky had turned the color of gunmetal. The light was thin, sharp, untrustworthy. Mara stood at the cabin window, rifle in hand, the breath she held longer than she realized. Jase moved behind her, slower now but steady. The fever hadn't left him, but his eyes had cleared, that same quiet resolve she'd seen when he first stepped out into the saloon's storm. "How many?" he asked. "2," she said. "But they ride like they're not alone." "They never are," he murmured. The riders dismounted 100 paces from the cabin. One of them, the older one with a grey beard and long coat, lifted his hand in a signal that wasn't threat, not yet. The other kept his weapon low, watching. Jase nodded toward the door. "Let me do the talking." Mara didn't argue, but she stayed close. When Jase stepped outside, the rain had stopped completely. The air smelled of ash and cold earth. The older rider called out, "Easy, Calder. I'm not here to drag you in." Jase's jaw flexed. "Then you'd better say why you are." The man smiled faintly. "Name's Sheriff Hart. You remember me from Red Hollow?" Jase nodded once. "You were the one who told me McCade wouldn't stop." "And I was right. You're late." Hart's gaze dropped to the bandage at Jase's shoulder, then lifted again. "Looks like you handled it fine without me." Jase's tone stayed level. "So what now?" The sheriff's horse shifted, restless. "McCade's men are scattered, but word's out. They think you took something of his." "I buried it." Hart's brows lifted. "Then you better hope the ground keeps secrets, because there's a bounty on your head, Calder, and another on hers." Mara stiffened behind the door. Jase didn't blink. "How much?" "500 apiece," Hart said. "Dead or alive?" "Generous," Jase said dryly. "McCade never paid that well when I worked for him." The sheriff sighed. "You know how this goes. Someone will come for you. Might not be me, but someone." "Then tell them to ride fast," Jase said. "The trail's long and I'm tired of being chased." The sheriff studied him for a long, quiet moment. "I could take you in, you know. Both of you. Claim the bounty and sleep easier." "You could," Jase said, "but you won't." Hart's eyes softened just a touch. "No," he said. "Because I remember a younger man once saved my deputy's life out near Dry Creek. You didn't take the reward then either." He turned his horse. "I'm giving you till sundown tomorrow. After that, the next ones won't talk first." As he and his deputy rode away, the silence returned, heavy, unfinished. Mara stepped out, the rifle still in her hand. "So, that's it? We run again?" Jase looked at her. "We ride. There's a difference." She frowned. "What's the difference, Jase?" "One means you're scared. The other means you've got something worth protecting." She let out a shaky laugh. "You always talk like a man half preacher, half outlaw." "Maybe that's all that's left of me." She stepped closer, close enough to touch, though she didn't yet. "What's left of you is the only thing that's ever felt real out here." He reached for her hand, then, slow and certain, their fingers met, fit. "I meant what I said last night," he whispered. "When I said you're what's worth surviving for?" Her breath caught. "And what if you don't survive?" He smiled, tired, quiet. "Then I'll still be yours, somewhere between the dust and the dawn." The words undid her. She pressed her forehead against his chest, the beat of his heart strong beneath her palm. For the first time since the saloon, she let herself cry, not out of fear, but out of everything that had been waiting to be felt. He held her like something sacred, careful not to break it. The warmth of his hand at her back made the world small and safe for a heartbeat. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were fierce again. "We can't keep running. Let's end this, Jase. For good." He studied her face. "How?" "We go to them. Not tomorrow. Tonight." "That's suicide." "It's a choice," she said. "And I'm done letting others make them for me." Jase looked out toward the horizon. Clouds breaking over the far ridge, streaks of gold bleeding through. He'd seen plenty of brave men die under skies like that, but he'd never seen someone look at death like it was freedom. He nodded slowly. "Then we ride at dusk." She exhaled, relief and fear tangled together. "You sure?" "I'm sure of you," he said. They packed what little they had. A few bullets, one saddlebag of supplies, the last of the whiskey, and enough courage to ride into hell if they had to. As the sun sank behind the mountains, the world turned to copper and shadow. The wind smelled of sage and final chances. Mara climbed into the saddle beside him. "You think the storm's waiting for us?" Jase adjusted his hat. "Maybe. But this time, we're not running from it." He looked at her, the woman who'd stepped out of fear and into fire. "Ready?" She smiled faintly. "I was born ready. Just didn't know for what." They rode out together, side by side, the horses' hooves drumming against the hard earth. The sunset painted them gold, two silhouettes moving toward whatever the night still held. Behind them, the cabin's fire burned itself out. Ahead, the valley opened wide, the world holding its breath one last time. And in the far distance, lightning flickered again, not warning, but invitation. If this story has left a shadow or a spark inside you, the narrator's voice came quiet as dusk settling on the plains. Stay close. The storm isn't done until love has the last word. Night fell fast, the kind of night that felt older than the land itself. The stars burned cold above the desert plain, and the air carried that sharp silence that comes only when the world knows something is about to end. Jase and Mara rode side by side through the dark. The wind tugged at her shawl and sent her hair loose around her face, glinting faintly in the starlight. Neither spoke for a long time. Words felt too small for the weight between them. Finally, she broke the quiet. "If this goes bad, if we don't make it out—" Jase stopped her with a glance. "Don't finish that." "But I have to," she said. "You know I do." He looked ahead, jaw tight. No one ever made it through the West by talking about dying before the fight. Mara smiled faintly. Maybe that's why no one ever found peace either. They reached the dry riverbed, the place McCade's men had used to move contraband, to trade, to kill. A half-broken windmill stood nearby, turning slow in the faint breeze. Its creak was the only sound. Jase dismounted first, boots sinking into the soft earth. "They'll come here," he said. "They always return to the scent of what they lost." Mara joined him, loading her rifle with careful hands. "Then let's give them something to remember." He turned toward her, the faint light outlining the scar on his jaw, the steadiness in his eyes. "You don't have to do this." "Yes," she said, voice steady. "I do. Because if I don't stand here with you, then everything we've fought for means nothing." He nodded once, slow, proud. "Then we stand." The hours passed like minutes. Coyotes called far off. The moon climbed higher. The windmill groaned against the sky. And then, faint at first, but certain, the sound of hooves. Jase drew his revolver, calm as breath. "They're coming." Mara crouched beside a fallen beam. Her heartbeat pounded against her ribs. When the riders appeared over the ridge, there were 6, McCade's remnants, faces she didn't recognize, but eyes that carried the same hunger. Their leader shouted, "Calder! Come out and make this easy!" Jase stepped forward, shadow stretched long behind him. "Nothing about this has ever been easy." Gunfire tore the night apart. Sparks leapt from stone. Mara fired from cover, her shot clean, deliberate. One rider fell. Jase moved to draw their fire away from her, bullets cutting the air around him. It was chaos, thunder and grit and the smell of burning powder. But in the chaos there was rhythm, a strange, terrible beauty in the way they moved together, 2 souls who had finally found something worth fighting for. When it ended, the world went quiet again. Smoke hung low. The moon was half hidden behind a veil of cloud. Mara lowered her rifle, breath shaking. "Is it over?" Jase holstered his gun, scanning the horizon. "It's over for now." She walked to him, her boots sinking into the dust. There was blood on his sleeve again. Not as bad this time, but enough to make her heart twist. "You're bleeding." He smiled, tired but alive. "Just another reminder I made it this far." She stood in front of him, close enough to see the starlight caught in his eyes. "You don't have to keep fighting anymore," she whispered. "You can stop running. We both can." He reached out, brushed his thumb along her jaw. "And go where?" "Home," she said. "Wherever that is." His breath caught on a quiet laugh. "Haven't had a home since I was 16. "Then make one," she said softly. "With me." The words hung there, fragile, trembling, real. He looked at her like he wasn't sure he deserved it. She looked at him like she didn't care. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of rain from far away. Not a storm this time, just the kind that comes to heal. Jase's hand found hers. His voice was low, rough, certain. "You sure about this, Mara?" She nodded. "I've never been more sure of anything." He pulled her close, their foreheads touching, the silence around them thick with everything they'd survived. For the first time since the desert took him, Jase Calder let himself breathe without fear. And for the first time since she'd lost her faith in love, Mara Ellison felt the ground steady under her feet. They stood there, wrapped in the sound of the wind and the slow hum of life returning. Not loud, not grand, but true. Somewhere behind them, the sun began to rise. A pale light spilling over the mountains, catching on the broken windmill, turning the dust to gold. Mara smiled through the quiet. "Looks like the storm's done." Jase glanced at the horizon. "No," he said softly. "It just changed its name." And as the dawn spread wider, they turned toward it together, two shadows fading into light. If this story has touched a tender place in your heart, let your light stay with us. Comment, share, and subscribe so this Western fire keeps burning for you.